Toni, do you see yourself as a teacher?
This is such a complicated question, because what I see is you and the trees and the shutters and this quilt over the fireplace. I hear the heart beating. Some faint hum, maybe it is this camera. I see Paula there looking into her viewer. There's the quiet breathing. Some faint sounds of traffic. So now you say, do you see yourself as a teacher? I have to think, what do I see myself as?
So it's automatically sort of an artificial realm or something.
Yes. I have to think, I have to reflect, produce imagery, which isn't there in sitting, listening to your question and being in this beautifully lit room, the soft rug and a comfortable sofa. The stillness of it all. Sound of car passing by. Where's the teacher?
So does some thought ever come up like, I'm supposed to be doing something now, I'm supposed to be answering this person's question, or
well, the question is put, and something happens, which I don't want to reflect about a lot, but something happens and a response comes, which it did a moment ago and it is doing it now. But why convolute this by thinking, what am I in answering this? Makes it very complicated and distracting to just being here. You see that? But you say something about this, because this being your first question, there must be something important in your mind about this thing of calling oneself a teacher or calling somebody my teacher.
Well, it's something that you've dropped the word teacher, which you used to use, and you don't anymore. And I've argued about this with you a lot over many years, sort of insisting that it's some kind of denial not to call yourself a teacher if you're teaching, and I'm really interested in this whole question of how we create authority, how we make a separation, and it's and I see what you're saying, that as long as we're just being here listening, there's no difference. There's no you, there's no me, there's no separation, unless some thought comes up that, oh, are you sure there's no separation, or what am I lacking that this person can help me find?
Yeah. Well, that this person can tell me to do, so I will become something other than what I am. But coming back to what you mentioned earlier, and memory coming up of occasions where it's definitely helpful to say, all right, I'm a teacher. Sometimes you're asked on a questionnaire, what do you do? In our bylaws, there is a resident teacher. I've never said, let's drop this, because we have to have bylaws. We have to have a description of what is going on so that it will be understood by the public at large, officials and so forth. So I'm going very easy there. I'm not denying to in a bureaucratic way that this is my function and the name for that function is a teacher. But in working and listening together and giving talks, if that image is there, I'm a teacher, then there's something awry, there's something fragmented. The mind is not fully openly here if it has to think or represent what I am, an idea. Then there's investment in this, and then there's fragmentation in the energy and in the whole expression. I think you understand that much better than it was in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Because we haven't hassled over this in a long time. Yeah.
Toni, there's a lot of talk nowadays about self-esteem, and a lot of talk about pride and identity. For example, groups of people who maybe have historically had a very negative identity, blacks, gays, old people, women, whatever. And it seems now that many of those groups are focusing on trying to have pride in their identity, pride in who they are, black pride, gay pride, whatever. Similarly with individuals who may have had a very oppressive upbringing and have a lot of self-hatred, which seems very prevalent in our culture, a lot of self-hatred. There's a lot of talk about countering that with self-esteem and affirmations, having a positive image of yourself. And when people hear you talking about how the self is just a construction of thought, and maybe they hear that as they should get rid of the self, it's as if the self were some precious thing that they were having to get rid of. The feeling is, people get very defensive about that, or there's a feeling that it's going to go back to how it was when things were negative and oppressive. Or I just wonder if we could talk about this whole, how you see this whole issue of getting rid of the self versus self-esteem and pride and identity, and what is this? What is this self we're talking about?
But see here, it depends whether in an unfolding dialogue is someone really interested in finding out what the self is, or is totally convinced for the time being at this moment that self-esteem is what is needed, either for my patients, my clients, my ethnic group, or myself. Now, if somebody is convinced that this is what is needed, who am I to say don't do this, or this is dangerous, or it may not be productive of true peace of mind, or I leave this alone. The dialogue unfolds and begins to sprout and grow if we question something together. What is self-esteem? What is the self? And we're both deeply interested in this. We're not already having some kind of investment in how we want to come out at the end, what we want to be, what we don't want to be, because that again fragments the inquiry in the presence of being here and wondering.
Well, wait a minute now. Don't I want to come out in a positive state in the end?
Do you want to look at that want? Do you want to look at wanting to come out positive and really listen to all the sounds and hums and physical sensations and ideas interwoven at this whole tapestry of wanting to become something? Are you interested in looking at that? That's what I'm here for, to look with you and to be open to inquire myself from a starting point of not knowing. That's our start. We don't know what the self is. We don't know what self-esteem is. Right now, if you ask me what is self-esteem, I would draw a blank. And you'd have to tell me more what you mean. And we would notice that in looking and reflecting and listening, we have to bring up some picture or some idea of what I am, some idea connected with memory of what other people have called me, what other people think of me. my reaction to that, my hurts, past hurts, recent hurts. Now, I don't want to hurt that way. I want to feel good about myself. And the idea that if I were like this, if other people thought of me like that, then I would feel better. We can look at this whole panorama of pictures and ideas woven into this physical organism with its emotions and sensations. And look at it spaciously. Not it shouldn't be like this, it should be like that, but with enormous room for everything to appear and be seen. So, do I need self-esteem? I don't know, I don't want to ask this question into a vacuum. Do you need self-esteem?
No.
Why not? Because you're disabled? I don't think so, but you tell me you are. Do you need to have some self-esteem as a disabled person? Or is already being a disabled person something abstract, a concept? Let's look at it. I'm not saying it is so. I don't want to blast this at you or stamp you this way. Mm-hmm. It's a very complex thing, this thing of self-esteem. And to look at it needs a tremendous passion for looking and interest and patience. To let this thing unfold, what all the rivulets that feed into this stream of self and self-esteem. And the opposite, the negative viewing of oneself as others see one. Mm-hmm. And we can look at all of that, alone, together, three of us, a whole group.
Well, in other words, there may be very, like deep messages that come at you from, as a disabled person, since you brought that up. And it is a concept, I mean, it is a label, but just if you have a disability or in some way you're physically not what's considered normal, you get certain things thrown at you, which then are very deeply internalized. I mean, this would be true of many other groups, of course.
Thrown at you meaning people, the way they talk or look at you, or how you feel they think about you.
Yeah, that maybe they think you're not capable of doing something, or there's kind of a sense of being childlike is associated with disability, I think, which... I mean, I don't want to get into too much of the specifics of disability.
No, but the specifics belong into the general picture. Being seen as childlike and then being treated as childlike and then hurt, humiliated feelings.
Feeling humiliated and feeling like I'm being seen inaccurately.
Yes.
And then feeling like I'm behaving the way I'm being seen, and it becomes this vicious circle, and
then the upshot, I've got to either change these people's view of me, which one finds out is very difficult to change other people's view of one. We try to do this all the time. And then maybe the suggestion or reading about it, maybe I can work on myself and improve my own self-esteem. If I thought of myself highly, then it wouldn't matter how other people think about me. Mm-hmm. Is that what you meant by self-esteem? If I change the way I think about myself, then it doesn't matter what others think. I know what I think about myself. And that is, I esteem myself, I respect myself, I think highly of myself.
And it's creating a positive image instead of the negative one, that I am a competent adult person or something, to replace the incompetent child image or whatever.
Yes. And does that work? Have you gone through that?
Yes, and it doesn't work.
Tell me why it doesn't work. I'm interested to hear that directly from you.
Mm-hmm. Because it just doesn't seem to get to the core of it. I mean, for one thing, it's not true. It's not accurate. I mean, because there are moments when I'm incompetent or childlike or whatever. So the positive image is in some way false, and it always gets bruised because somebody important to me sooner or later contradicts it, and even at my moment of behaving in the way I think most competent, tells me I'm incompetent or something like that.
Or may tell you how competent you are and you feel there's something hypocritical in what he or she says. They don't really mean it. They just want to make you feel good.
Right. Or whatever.
Yes.
Yes. So it doesn't seem to really get to the core of...
So what's the core? What's the core?
The core seems to be not caring anymore. I don't mean in the sense of despair, not caring, but I mean in the sense of not being able to be hurt by that, because it's not who I am. I'm not identified with what other people think of this body, or what I think of this body, or what society thinks of it, or what or the feelings that come up when I'm hurt, or the wanting to be something else, wanting to be wanting everything to be resolved, wanting to be perfect, wanting to be fixed.
And wanting to be feeling good all the time.
Yeah.
Feeling satisfied all the time. But let me ask you, I was listening very carefully. If you're not what other people think you are, and if you doubt that you are what you think you are, negative image, positive image, the mixture of the two, and if you're not what you think you want to become in the future, then what are you?
Nothing.
What do you mean by that?
Just open space, just listening, just everything that's here. And
you mean the idea of that, the conceptualization of open space, the concept or idea of nothingness, emptiness, the void, and saying that's what I am, if I'm not the images and if I'm not the ideas of other people and my history and my positive and negative self-esteem, if I'm not all of that, then I must be the void, I must be nothing.
Well, I don't mean it in a negative sense of voidness, of, sort of, again, that despair quality of the void. I meant just kind of a spacious openness, that emptiness, it's what's there when there's just listening. No, I don't mean the concept of it. I mean just being that, just listening. Though it can become a concept, really. It seems like that's a... that thought, there is that open listening and that spaciousness, and then the thought comes up. The thought comes up, this is spacious, open listening, and this is what I am, or something, then it's a concept.
Well, is that what's happening right now?
No, there's just listening.
And in this listening, with the fading sound of airplane, and the hum of traffic and the heartbeat, taking a deep breath, all the physical vibrations, whatever all is there, the words don't need to disturb the openness. In that listening, is there a thought about myself? As the listener, as the attender, the observer, the teacher, the disabled person. And in this listening, is there high and low? Is there self-esteem? Or is that irrelevant? Is there even a separation between Paula, who's taking this video, you asking questions, here, myself listening, talking, traffic humming? It's really amazing if we don't think about ourselves. Where is the need for self-esteem? Repairing our image or upholding it or putting someone else down. Because you could say, yes, all right, here, right now, we're all listening, we're all of one mind and investigating and being here, present, in a loving sort of a way. But let me step out of the door, down into the world. Somebody calling me a name or treating me very unfairly at the ticket counter, trying to take an airplane back, and somebody's really treating me unfairly or talking to me in a very curt way, impolite. Or I'm African-American person, somebody crowds right in ahead of me, but just as though I didn't exist. Then where is this open listening with no need for self-esteem? That's a good question, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Or does immediately in this conditioned environment of wanting to be treated in a certain way, wanting to be considered, wanting to get there first, all of our deeply ingrained individual and collective selfishness. And I'm not saying it judgmentally, it's there. If we look, it's there almost all the time. Wanting to be first, wanting to be treated, wanting to get the best, the most. Be happy. Is it possible in that environment, which we're creating it, we're the victims of it, the participants in it, producers of it, for a moment there being this openness and seeing the whole crazy show, and no need to get hurt, no need to endlessly talk about what he did to me and what she could have done for me and didn't do for me. Dropping these stories and just being there. With all the hecticness and craziness that we're manifesting most of the time.
So what would you say to somebody who is feeling hurt or angry, hurt,
yeah.
and angry? Somebody has just treated them in a way that makes them feel misunderstood, that they don't exist. That life-threatened feeling that we get when.
Yes.
Well, how would you suggest that someone work with that, or do what should you do?
Yeah. So see, if you come to me and you're just smarting with hurt, it's so painful, and the story is still running, and you want to talk to me about it. Maybe get my support, my sympathy. Why not start listening? How else can you start? We'll listen together. Maybe you don't want to listen, you just want to talk and want to express. And you crave for support for your feelings. Not only support for your feelings, but you want to have an ally in your fight or opposition or vengeful thoughts against the person who hurt you. You're seeking, we are, I'm not saying you, we are seeking allies. We love to hear other people share our feelings and share our resentments, our anger at someone else. So can I listen to all of that and remain here, not get drawn into supporting the anger or rejecting the anger or becoming an ally in the anger or vengefulness against someone else? Not drawn into that, but totally listening to this as though I was you, but still not being that. I think that's the first step. Now, if you want more than just being listened to, and you realize support is not what you want to find out, why do I get hurt time and time and time again? Always the same thing happening over and over. I remember as a child, when my brother would get punished for something, sometimes a failing mark in school, I thought this is going to happen again and again and again. I'll have to go through this, and I suffered intensely with him. I knew I was going to go through this again and again and again. That's all I knew. There was no thought, is there a way out of this or so. I wasn't there, just realizing painfully the repetitiveness of it. The continuity, that's what I mean, the continuity of it. So maybe you and I, at this point, don't want to just get support for our feelings, although I don't deny it, to listen, to be there with someone. But maybe we want to find out, does this have to go on and on and on? Not how can I terminate it, but just wondering, what is going on? Which has been going on for centuries and thousands of years and will continue this way. What is it? What's happening? To get into direct touch with the hurt, since that's what you brought up, the anger, the pain.
But people often say to me they don't know what that means, to just be with it or to get in direct touch with it, or...
Yes, because it's not something that you know. This is not knowing it. It is not knowing it. It is not knowing the anger, and because it's not known and labeled as what it is and recognized and analyzed in a known way, because it's not known, therefore there is the possibility of just that. What is it? I don't mean what is it and hankering for an answer.
Like analysis of it.
Yeah, or it's
trying
it's
to figure it out.
Or explanation, description. But this vast, call it dark, openness of not knowing, in the presence of internal upheaval, turbulence, pain, tension. So, what is it? And noticing, if there is some attention, noticing the drawing away from it, the resistance to it, the habitual, very habitual desire for escape, partly based on the idea, I can't bear that, it's unbearable. I can't touch it, it's impossible, I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we don't know how, it's no how. How is something in between, it's already an escape. That's something we never learn any place. We always learn to know. Knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. Past, present, future. But not knowing is not something ever talked about or learned or practiced. I don't know whether it can be practiced. Of course, somebody would say, look, I don't know what you're talking about, goodbye. Well, but it usually doesn't work this way. If you're really there in this vast not knowing which is embracing and open, maybe that will communicate itself. Maybe. And there can be a joining in that. And it's already a completely different way of being than escaping or resisting or begging for support or wanting to have allies in one's pains and hurts and vengeance. It's different. We don't know. What is it? The birds here. Such green trees. Yellow flowers and purple. That little red flag of the mailbox.
Seems like we're almost afraid to just be that simple, that the mind starts creating dramas, questions, problems.
To keep existing as a question and knowledge and drama producing mind and problem producing mind. That mind with its eon-old habits of creating drama and problems and knowledge and questions wants to also continue. And the fear you talk about, almost there's a fear of touching something that is not of that mind, but a quieting of it, without knowing what's going to happen next. Woof. So what's the fear? Is it a fear? Because that can be immediately translated into the knowledge. Yes, of course, it's the fear of not continuing and being satisfied with that answer. Mm-hmm. I've got a pretty up-to-date spiritual answer. I'm afraid of not continuing. But that's not being in touch with that fear anymore, is it?
No.
It's slipping into the security of an answer. Mm-hmm. And not in touch with the discontinuity.
Not in touch with the discontinuity.
Discontinuity. Dying.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Dying to being this or that. The hurt person, the victim, the victor. The oppressed or the oppressor. Because these are pretty dramatic roles. Dying to being something. Me, something me. Me. Which is nothing fearful or painful about that, but thought makes it so. Painful, fearful, frightening, dangerous.
No, I can hear some people right now saying, but me is a wonderful thing. Me is a, me
Then
is...
live it. Live it and see and watch. Yeah, we can always oppose what someone says and say, well, the opposite is true of what you say. But living as me, it brings what? All the stuff that you started out with. People don't see me the way I want to be seen. They don't satisfy my me. How can they? Everybody wants to satisfy their me. And it is an eternal collision course. Not just with other me's, but internally. Because there's the me that wants peace, there's the me that wants to battle, the me that wants to follow, the me that wants to rule, the me that wants to desire, and the me that wants to be without desire. The me that wants to express anger, the me that wants to be without anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can we listen to this whole battlefield if it's there, like this roaring traffic? It's roaring, but it's faint at the same time. Because the listening is strong. What else do you hear other people say?
Well, one of my favorite topics, of course, is addiction.
All right, let's have a drink.
A drink to addiction. So, and by addiction, I don't necessarily just mean addiction to substances like alcohol or whatever, although it could be that, but I also mean addiction to habitual patterns of thought or habitual patterns of behavior, in which case we're all addicts to something. We're all stuck in these patterns that as we become more conscious, we see the pattern. And I mean, I know people who are, well, myself, I mean, I'm stuck in many things, or I see people who are like drinking and they've tried everything. They go to AA, they do this, they do that, and it just doesn't work. They don't stop. And then one day they do stop. And the more I look at it, the more I realize that I don't really know, in the case of the addictions that I've gotten out of, or that have fallen away, I don't really know how that happened.
Are you satisfied with not knowing how that happened?
More satisfied than I was.
Or are you addicted to having
I think I am
explanations for
that.
And what does an explanation do for us? It's amazing. It's something interesting to watch and to investigate. We talked about a little bit earlier. It relieves us of the seeming chore of looking directly, being present, to a smoother, lubricated level of having words for it, explaining it, which gives pseudo-security. But I don't want to interrupt your other train of... What are you asking about addiction?
Well, I guess the big question is how to get rid of it. How does change happen? How do we get out of those stuck grooves?
How does change happen? I'm sort of simultaneously, so I don't lose the question.
Mm-hmm.
How does change happen? How do we get out of addiction? How can we get rid of it? Do you hear the sound of the question?
Yeah, it's like how it's wanting an explanation and wanting a way that's assured, and wanting to fix things up, wanting to fix myself up, and wanting to fix other people up, and wanting to fix wanting to get to some sort of non-addicted world,
Yes.
non-addicted me.
Yes. That ideal looms over it all, the non-addicted me. And in all of this confusion of wanting to get rid of what's there and wanting to become the ideal, which is not there but imagined, and imagined to be satisfactory, where in all of this is the being in touch with what's happening? What is it that we call addictive thought? You mentioned it. Let's not just talk about drinking and drugs. Let's also include addiction to thinking in certain ways. To thinking. And I'm not condemning thinking. Thinking has a very, very vital function in our life. But the repetitiveness of patterns, of opinions.
Or always thinking about the future, or always thinking about the past, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Always planning,
Yes.
or always...
And maybe we could say, we begin to call it an addiction when we become aware of the repetitiveness of it, the circularity of it. It always goes around like a little hamster cage.
And the pain of it. The
pain of it.
Yeah.
So, is it possible to see all the habitual reactions to it, which you listed, how to get rid of it, how to this and that, and drop for the time being the ideal of the non-addicted person, and with the how to get rid of and what to become with that momentarily out of the way, what is really happening in a circular thought, the thought about the future. You bring it up very often. What will I do in the future? Where will I be? Or where could I be? Just watch that thought arise and how it immediately connects. The whole physical organism is engaged in the fantasy about the better future or the worse future. And almost the whole physical organism craves more of this fantasy about the future. It's addicted to the manifestation, to the physical, what can you call it? Manifestations of these thoughts. The physical juices that flow, the muscles that operate, the glands that function, and the organs that vibrate with the thought about the future, the good future, the bad future. Just watch it all. And you can say, well, how do I do that? It happens. It is watchable the moment trying to get rid of it or engaging in there's another word which is engaging in the future of being non-addicted. Once that is put aside, temporarily, who knows how long, it doesn't matter. And what's going on right now, listening. To a fantasy unfolding about the future. And the body responding and wanting to feel the way it feels when I think about the future.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot will reveal itself, because then I don't have to feel the way I feel right now, discontented, lacking. These are all physical feelings, sensations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel lacking and the discontent, the physicality of discontent. But the body knows, nobody is arranging this, the body knows from the past, body-mind is one whole, that dreaming about the future brings about a more pleasant physical state. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. I'm not saying there's something right with it. What is it? Feel it out. Be aware of it. Then you don't have to explain it or analyze, because it's there. But with the awareness of it, something is different than if there's no awareness. That's an amazing discovery, which no one can make for another. So I don't know whether this came out clear. The question was, what about addictions? Let go of trying to fix it, or dreaming about the non-addictive state, or not just projecting it, and be with what it is that you call addiction. But spaciously, there's room for that traffic hum, and the children's voices, and the breathing, and the dogs barking.
So would you say to come back to the sensations in the body and the sounds that are there, and it seems like, in a way, that's what you're saying, and yet it seems like you're always being very careful not to make it a method, not to, because what you're really pointing to is a kind of openness that also sees that urge to have a method or
which when you started in, you were saying, are you saying, let's come back to the breathing and the sounds? Which may not even be possible at this moment of this addictive drive to whatever, think about the future, or indulge in angry expression or lustful expression. By indulging, I mean just going on with it. Don't interrupt me. At this moment, there may not be any what should I say? You don't want to be attentive. Mm-hmm. You don't want to stop and come back to what? Traffic sounds? Mm-hmm. All systems are go for the anger or the lustful fantasies or engagement. I'll be attentive later on when I go back to my sitting posture. I'll do that twice a day, so I'll take care of that then. But right now, let's have fun with the anger or fear. It's not fun, but there's an addiction to fearful thoughts. Reflecting about my terrible childhood can be a real addiction to stuckness and needing to go over and over and over this. So at that moment of being stuck in this, is there a spark of interest to stop and look? And the first thing that will reveal itself maybe is not the traffic and the dogs and the flowers and blue sky, but this momentum of current of wanting to go with it. Mm-hmm. And resistance to being interrupted in that. Even that sparking another anger. I have to express this, I have to blah, 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 blah. But as I always say, since we're talking about it, we're looking at it now in a very spacious setting. Maybe when it's not spacious and tight, there will still be this spark of, hey, what's going on? I was so interested in that time. And here it's going on. What is going on? And feeling all of these energies to not be attentive, but go with what has in the past been satisfying, pleasurable. And yet that spark of attention can burst into being here, not just going, flowing away, carried away with a habit. And this being here, please don't misunderstand, doesn't mean fighting the habit, resisting it. It's shedding light. This is what's going on. What is it? Sort of kindly, gently.